Welcome to the Business Owners Council, Legal Issues from Growth to Exit.
Hey everyone, welcome into an all-new episode of the Business Owners Council, From Growth to Exit with Kevin Brick. I'm your host, Mike Leon. This is the show where Florida business owners get practical, plain English legal strategies for building stronger companies, from avoiding costly disputes to scaling smart to maximizing your business's value at exit. And in each episode in this series, we'll sit down with Kevin, the founder of Brick Business Law, to talk through the exact playbooks his firm uses to help businesses thrive. Kevin and his team, they've guided Florida companies through litigation, transactions, employment issues, and growth challenges of every kind. So whether you're growing fast or you're facing a tough decision or preparing for the sale of your company, this podcast is going to give you all the tools and insights you need to move forward with confidence. Kevin, it's good to see you as always. Let me ask you this at a high level here. How are you seeing business owners, especially when it comes to AI now? How are they using AI from the legal realm and perspective?
Well, I see three major areas. One is that they're researching legal issues actually before even calling a lawyer. Number two is they're drafting contracts and policies and corporate documents themselves. And number three is they're actually drafting litigation documents, so things they're actually filing in court. And I see them creating major headaches for themselves. So they're taking on risks they don't understand. They're creating new risks that didn't exist before. And then they're increasing their legal costs later. So a lot of people think AI is going to reduce lawyers' workload, but I actually think it's creating sort of a ticking time bomb of new work based on what I'm seeing business owners doing in the legal realm.
That's right. I've heard a lot of lawyers say that you're just creating more work for yourself later on. But so Kevin, in that regard though, you mentioned a few there, but what are the biggest problems that these business owners are creating for themselves by using AI instead of reaching out to someone like you early on in the process?
Well, number one, they're trying to be the lawyer for the business, right? So essentially they're practicing law without a license. And in some cases, when they do that, they actually expose themselves personally, especially if they have co-owners or partners that are involved. They're creating some serious issues for their business when they're sort of pretending to be the lawyer for the business by using an AI application. A number two thing is they're actually creating some bad agreements for their companies, things that have unfavorable terms, or they're just unclear, or they just use the wrong type of agreement. And then number three, I see they're creating just massive litigation risk. So, they play lawyer and then they create this bigger risk. And so those are kind of the three areas I see as creating big problems.
Yeah. Well, let's stay on the litigation risk part. First, explain how they're creating that for them. And then maybe, do you have an example from recent years or something like that where somebody created that litigation risk for themselves by using AI in the capacities you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, what they're doing is they're having unprotected conversations with AI. Maybe they're like disclosing facts or thoughts on a certain related topic, and then they're putting sensitive information into the AI platform that can be subpoenaed. So they're creating a record of some of these things. So sometimes they'll even talk to their lawyer and then paste some notes or communications into AI to kind of refine them. And they're losing protections that they would normally have for attorney-client privilege. So that's one thing. They're actually maybe sometimes creating what would be Exhibit A for the other side's case when they're putting those things into ChatGPT or wherever they're using. Number two, a lot of them are generating, sending, filing documents in court based on AI advice. So those documents, sometimes they have admissions. Sometimes they're doing things that will cause them to lose legal protections. They're creating new responsibilities. They're generating outcomes. And all those things have consequences attached to them. And then number three, they're acting on AI advice that doesn't really take into account real world practices. So something might be technically correct, but practically it does not get to the result that they want. So these are all new problems that wouldn't have existed except for AI modules. And you asked me about a real world example. So, one thing I've seen recently, and I've seen it kind of happen more and more, is that we had a client who their business got a demand letter. And the demand letter, essentially, it threatened to report our client to a regulatory agency unless they settled. They paid some settlement amount. And then the business owner on the other side threatened to file litigation in the letter. Okay. So when we got this, our client brought it to us. We saw there's some major problems, and it was obviously AI generated. So number one, within the letter, what they did was actually extortion, like blackmail. And so the letter itself is a crime. What they wrote in there is a criminal activity. And it's actually also probably the unauthorized practice of law. A business owner threatening to file a lawsuit on behalf of their company. That's something that they can't really do. But more importantly, from a strategic standpoint, it showed us that the other side they didn't have a lawyer. So they are coming from a standpoint of weakness. It shows us that they're not really invested in putting money behind this problem and doing it the correct way. So normally we would have been a little bit on the defensive, or maybe we would have been willing to negotiate based on the underlying facts. But when we got it, we saw, hey, this is an AI letter. Obviously, they're making mistakes. They don't really have the budget to pursue this. So it actually put us on the offense. And I'm sure when they sent it to us, it looked good to them. But what they did instead is they exposed themselves to risk and put us in a stronger position.
Yeah. It's a dangerous web that they're going to weave. But let me play devil's advocate here for a second, Kevin.
Sure.
Let's say AI avoids some of these obvious mistakes, right? Is it still better to spend money on using legal counsel versus AI?
I mean, I still see big problems out there. So let's just take the example of a demand letter. Right? Somebody comes in to our firm and they want a demand letter sent for, some way they were wronged. And so a lot of people look at a demand letter and they think that's what they're paying for, the demand letter. But what it really is a whole body of work that leads up to that. So a lawyer does some investigating. They might talk to people who are involved. They might gather evidence and try to preserve some of the evidence, like talking to witnesses and getting an affidavit. So they're taking the initial steps of building and understanding a case. They might do legal research to understand the viability of various claims. They might have a strategy discussion with a client about, what's the outcome we're seeking from this demand letter. And then when we're looking at the outcome, do they have the budget and the risk tolerance to actually pursue that? So what is the client willing to do to get to that outcome? And then we kind of take all this stuff, all this knowledge and strategy, and we put it into our strategy in the demand letter. So the letter itself is not the product, but it's actually the strategy and the building of the case. And it's a demand letter. It's like the first shot fired over the bow. So we have to use it in a very valuable way. And there's a lot that goes into that. So sometimes maybe a client comes to you for a demand letter. You don't send a demand letter at all because based on the strategy and what you want to do and different requirements, maybe you just go right to court, or maybe you send a demand letter that is lower, than the amount that you might normally be requesting or that the client wants because there's some risk, or maybe you send a demand letter that's higher because you want to negotiate. So there's a lot that goes into that, and those are things that AI just doesn't really account for.
Kevin, I think the Captain Obvious follow-up is there's a lot of risk associated. But why are these sophisticated owners falling for this? It can't be the low price point. Maybe it is. Why are they falling for this then?
Well, I think you definitely touched on one of the important things is the price point, right? So if you have, a service in AI that's essentially free, and you're going to go to your lawyer and it's going to be $1,000 or thousands of dollars for some service, there's an obvious trade-off that's in favor of AI. And then if you look at the speed, for instance, your AI results are going to come very quickly. You've got to wait on a lawyer or law firm to get you the results you want. And then I think one thing that really gets business owners pulled in is that the AI produces something that looks very polished, right? So it's like it gives them confidence in the output because it looks really good. But it's kind of like, I think of it as like a Trojan horse. It's the perfect storm where it's almost duping a business owner into thinking that they have what they need because they don't have really that trained eye to understand that there's something missing, or it's not the exact thing that they need, or maybe they haven't looked deeply at all of the subtle issues around the document or the thing that they're trying to get from their lawyers. So I think it's, to answer your question, it's something that's cheap, it's fast, it's polished, but it creates risks that they just don't see.
Well, as we wrap on this episode, Kevin, for that business owner that's listening to this, they've heard you now speak and they realize they're wearing multiple hats, being the owner and legal counsel, which you advised them not to do. What's a piece of advice that you would steer them towards right now about how they can rectify the situation?
Yeah, I would say understand that using AI, it has good purposes. It's got good utility. But when it comes to things that are, there's big risks associated. There's big costs to getting it wrong. Getting something slightly wrong can mean big bad outcomes. I would say it makes sense to spend the money, make sure you're hiring good trusted counsel who can get you the absolute right decision rather than relying on a cheap, fast, and easy tool.
Yep. There it is. Words to live by, folks that are using AI right now. Kevin, thanks for the time and the insights. I appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And thank you for everyone out there joining us for this installment of the Business Owners Council. If you found this conversation valuable, do me a favor, follow us, subscribe so you're never going to miss an episode. And if you're a Florida business owner that's facing a challenge right now or an opportunity, maybe it's a dispute, a transaction, you're preparing for some growth or exit in terms of selling the company, visit brickbusinesslaw.com to connect with Kevin and his team. One more favor before you head out the door. I mentioned liking and subscribing, but share the episode with someone who needs to hear it. I'm Mike Leon. We'll see everybody next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.